WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American over here in Germany. Today we get to taste the Wilderness Trail. Yay! So we're waiting for Haley to come and the stream, but we're going to start anyways. I'd like to greet a few people in the chat here. It's all going to be English today, even though she's not here, so I don't have to switch unless I get an email in the next couple of minutes that says she is not going to be making it. Been a little bit of a crisis, tiny little emergency over there in Kentucky today. So, moin, moin in German means hi in northern Germany. Greg from Paris Whiskey World is over there. Paris Whiskey Guide, I'm so sorry. Expedition Whiskey says, hello. Marcos, hello. A nice evening, everyone. I'm really looking forward to this tasting. Alex writes down here, good evening together, everyone. Very, very, very good. Slanchevas says Bourbony greetings, everyone. And a little bit of mixtures to get warm here. So nothing under 50%. Nope. Mario says, good evening. Greetings from Northern Hesse. Wilderness Trail he has it not yet had. Wow, can't translate. He's very excited to see what's going to happen. So Stefan says, hello, let's have a nice walk on the Whiskey Trail. Greetings from Wild Westphalia estate here in Germany that I also live in. Good evening, everyone. Wilderness Trail premiere for me. I have to translate French as well. Wow. Okay. Ralph says, hello, everyone. I hope everyone has a great tasting evening. And don't forget to put the thumbs up. Yes, yes, yes. So my first tasting after I've actually had 2 bottles in my cabinet, says Klaus CP. Nathan, hey, greetings, my friend. So, hi there, Bourbon Diaries. Silvio, good evening. Axel, good evening. Marcel, hi, good evening. Greetings from Hamburg. Mark says hello, and we'll just work and see what's going to happen. So I invite you, those of all that us that have a tasting set, I sent out a total of 25 tasting sets here to actually go for the 6-year-old at the beginning. Now, the Wilderness Trail 6-year-old is a historic event in the history of the distillery. Yes, in Kentucky, there was a very limited release. I think there was 15 barrels of a 8-year-old. So we have the 6-year-old. This is the high rye bourbon. There was a wheated 6-year-old bourbon as well. Did not receive that in Germany, but we did receive this, and I'm very, 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 very excited about this. So this is a 6-year-old product. This is 50%. This is bottled and bond, and I will be talking a little bit about the distillery in a moment. All right, let's make sure we get this here so we can see it. Yay, almost have this set up right here. Very, very nice. All right, so say hi to a few people in the chat again, and then we'll move on. So, okay, back from Scotland, Marco says, and it's too warm in Germany. Jasmine says, hi, guys. Yes, Facebook, my German channel, my English channel at the same time, Greg. Good evening, says Kurt. Johan, good evening. Packaging is gorgeous, isn't it? I just love this bottle. A little bit of the curves going on here. Very, very nice bottle here. We do have the 700 milliliter bottle that hit the German. No, it's a 750. It's a 750. I had to relabel them all for Europe and for Germany just a few weeks ago. All right, so Haley hasn't written, so we're just going to keep this up here. We have 25 people so 4 people watching on Facebook, 4 on my English channel, and 43 in the German channel. Forgot to taste the 6 on the Whiskey Spring. Oh, dear, how could you do that? And no set, says Andrea here, but I took the chance to open my bottles that I got a while ago, small batch bourbon, bottled and bond, and there's so much written on there. And here, bourbon fan Frank says here, hello, everyone, and I'm looking forward to a great, delicious tasting. All right, good, good, good. So now Wilderness Trail is a fairly new distillery. I'm just going to tell the story at the beginning. So what we had are two buddies. One is Dr. Pat Heiss, and the other one is Shane. And they actually started off way, way back when, Shane Baker, in a band together. So we're talking college aged bands. Now, Shane Baker had already worked as a mechanical engineer, and Dr. Pat Heist was actually doing his um, PhD on biochemistry, I think it is, yeast. And so they were both together in a band, a heavy metal rock band. And so they both loved whiskey and they were talking and they were like, okay, we're not going to be professional musicians. What do? We have kids, we have families, we need to have a good job and so on. And so they were like, all right, let's think about a bourbon distillery. So they wrote a tiny little business plan, looked at all the numbers, and were like, they put their checkbooks together, like, this isn't going to happen. And it was just like, no, what do we do? So instead of that, they decided to actually go into the consulting industry. And they weren't any consultants, they were firm solutions from fermentation. So we have a PhD in yeast, and we have a mechanical engineer that knows how to fix basically anything. And so what they did is they started consulting other distilleries. Now, way back when they started, about 20 years ago, this was the beginning of the ethanol fuel from corn stadium. So they would go out to these new distilleries, fuel plants, ethanol fuel plants. They had big old fermenters and wash tuns. I mean, when I was at Wilderness Trail, they were doing 20,000 gallons. These guys were doing 90,000. I think I have the phrase even 900,000 gallons, which is too much for me. And that was all about the extraction from the corn into the ethanol. And of course, if there's any mistake anywhere, it's always, always, always with the yeast. Dr. Pat Heiss says 9 out of 10 times it's not the yeast, it's something else. He talked about finding squirrels in pipes. He talked about a lot of wild contamination. He talked about insect populations and everything else. It's just like, and these are, he worked and his buddy worked for over 10 years fixing the problems of other distilleries. And they actually had a little book where they wrote down everything. Don't do this. I like that. Don't do this. Instead, do this. And so they always had in the back of the mind, hey, we're going to have our own distillery. And so after 10 years of consulting all the big boys internationally, as well as in Kentucky, and all the fuel making plants, all the bourbon making plants, all the spirit making plants, they have a catalog of 9,000 different yeast samples. Amazing. They sell yeast. They help other people develop yeast strains and so on. These are the experts for fermentation. They finally had enough money and made their own distillery. All right, so Silvio also says here, very, very nice bottle design. Hey, Lawrence, good to see you. Very, very, very good. Rudiger says, today, without the tasting set, I'm only here to improve my English. Why not? Why not? Greg says here, it really shows it is made with care. So probably a sign there is a much care in the content. That's why I'm excited about the brand, just an expression. Greg, you have no idea. The more I learn about Wilderness Trail, I was just there in June, the more I'm excited about what and how they're doing it. I mean, these guys, they learn from everyone else and they're doing it right. All right, so very, 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 very nice stuff here. Good. Wishing you a nice evening. Thank you very much. And do you drink with? Do you like to drink with extra squirrel? It's amazing the stories that Dr. Heiss told there on different. Go to Bourbon Pursuit, the podcast. Listen to Dr. Heiss. Listen to Shane Baker talk about all that they've done and found in other places. It's amazing. I've noticed the tree on the bottle. Yeah, exactly. So first of all, we have the Wilderness Trail logo here. We have here also the logo. We need Haley to talk a little bit of branding, which I am not actually the greatest on. And on the sides for the family reserve, which just means it's a single barrel, you always have that little label. And if I were to turn around on my t-shirt, you'd have exactly the same motive. And that motive is actually in the gift shop of the distillery as well. All right, so I hope everyone has poured the 6-year-old. It's a 6-year-old, and on the side here, you can always read all the information about this bottle. So it says here, made from locally sourced grains of corn, rye, and malted barley from an old traditional mash bill. I don't know why they put the word old on here. Shane Baker said he developed the mash bill himself, and he actually applied for that mash bill and the intellectual property here. All right, good. So we have 64% corn, we have 24% rye, and we have 12% malted barley. And this is a copper pot distilled using the sweet mash process and aged for 6 years. There's a lot of information here. All right, so what we have here is that bottle, and what we have here is this bottle. This bottle is the wheated bourbon. This is the high rye bourbon. They're exactly the same mash bill except for the one part where they exchange the 24% wheat and put in 24% rye instead. So I have a few bottles of these left. If somebody wants some, please contact me. They're sold out in Germany. And maybe by Christmas, we might have new bottles. Can't promise. Next year, definitely. So if you need some bottles of the wheated, please, please, please contact me and we will make this work somehow. All right. So that's the email address you can contact there. All right. Good. So now, the second part that's important is that when they at the very beginning, when they started the distillery, they actually had a copper pot still. Yeah. So they'd mash everything. They would put it in there. They would distill it, and there was a thumper, a doubler, excuse me, at the end, and then they would bottle it. Now, the only problem we have with a copper pot still is you cannot scale up. You can run that copper pot still 24/7, and that's it. And that's what they're doing. And they're like, well, And so they did what almost everyone in bourbon in Kentucky does. They said, we need to go to a column still. And if we look at the other products, for example, our second whiskey here, it's going to say here it was actually distilled on a copper. Where does it say that here? Copper pot. Okay, that's also copper pot. Sorry. So I have some other ones that were actually on the column still here. Copper pot. So everything's going to be copper pot today, isn't it? And there's the column still, which they moved to, and which most of the new products are going to be as well. And now what they're doing is they're building another copper pot, copper still, and that's even bigger and even going to have more. So they started off actually making about, I forgot the numbers here, 30 to 70 barrels a week. And then they went up to at 70 barrels a day, and now they're up to over 200 barrels a day. Wow. Okay, very, very, very good. So, restrained nose, but very nice. Thank you, thank you. We'll go through. Yes, please write down your notes for this one. So, now this is the first product that made it over here to Germany, the 6-year-old one. And what really, really fascinates me as well is these are locally sourced grains. That means that way back when Dr. Pat and Shane actually went to a farmer, and this farmer actually had a seed farm. What is a seed farm? A seed farm is actually a farm that is not made to produce products for corn and so on, to eat bread, but actually produce seeds to sell the next season to the other farmers. And so this was one of the experts in the area. And he said, hey, we need corn, we need wheat, and we need barley. And he was like, I can get you corn, I can get you wheat, barley, no thank you. So they working on the barley. They now have barley from Kentucky as well. So all the grains used now are locally sourced. And what happens usually if you take corn is you take corn, you put it in a big silo, and that big silo is mixed with corn from other farms, and you have no idea what the terroir is. Terroir, that soil it came from. They know. They know the names of the farmers, they know exactly where that is, and they only get their corn from the local area from those local farmers. And that's so important for this whiskey because that means they can have a quality control and they can actually make sure it's exactly what they need and what they want. Okay. So copper pot makes the difference. Unfortunately, not always. Not always. Not sure many U.S. distillers have, except for Woodford Reserve. And even Woodford Reserve, the percentage of copper pot still whiskey in their Woodford Reserve is a minority. The majority is made on column stills. Isn't that also amazing? Yes. All right. So if we actually nose this 6-year-old bourbon, now, the very, very, very beginning, their plan was to have between 6 and 10-year-old bourbon, 6 to 8. Let's call it 6 to 8. And they were like, okay, good. We're going to release stuff with 4. We don't have anything that we're going to release under 4 years of age, but we're going to try to go for that flavor profile 6 to 8 years. So we get the beginning. The 8-year-old has just been released as well. And that's what they think is the optimal time for a whiskey there. Always 50% minimum. Bottled and bond, and if it's a single barrel, it's going to be higher. And so we have here a product. Please write down in the chat what you have here. Marco says after a few minutes, he gets a nice vanilla note. Behind that, there's knocking the rye. Nice. Very, very, very good. So restrained, but very nice. This is one of the more complex bourbons that I've had before. Hey, Cool Runnings, nice to see you. So vanilla like ice cream. Ooh, very, very nice. I know Woodford Reserve clearly advertises pictures of the pot still. Of course, not of the column. And that explains my mistake at the beginning as well. I was absolutely 100% sure because I was at the distillery in 2017 and they gave me the impression that every single drop of Woodford Reserve was made there in Versailles, Kentucky. Not true. Not true at all. All right. So no 6-year-old, the caramel, the brown sugar, a Coke note, vanilla ice cream. And here it's going to be where's the rest of the gang? It's Wednesday. So the 6-year-old, his bourbon highlight of the year, Marco the Sea Lord. All right, so I invite you to taste with me this and write down your notes as well. Now, this is, when it's gone, it's gone. We're not going to get any new 6-year-old, at least not for a long time here. So I highly recommend that if you need to have a bottle of this, make sure you find it. Dine Whiskey is one of the places that we actually sell this from directly here, and it just arrived in Germany just weeks ago. So we're still rolling out the distribution. It is the summer break time over here at the moment. We're talking about a price here in Germany of 93 euros. And I think it's basically worth every single cent. Cheers. Now, at the end of this tasting, those 25 people that have the sets out there, they're going to vote to see which one's going to be the best. We have 6 different whiskeys we're going to try. We have the 6-year-old, and we have 5 single barrel releases here from Wilderness Trail. It goes on and goes on and goes on. Very, very, very nice. Yeah, cheers. So I have a depth of a brown sugar, vanilla. I'm going to go for that little Coke Haribo bottles going on here. I get some wood, not too much. I get a nice honeyed moment. I get the pecan and a little bit of the tobacco going on there as well with this. A little bit like a pecan pie moment as well. So your input here would be highly welcomed for those of us that actually have here A. Okay. So Haley just contacted me and said that she is not going to be able to make it. Didn't work out the way she wanted it. So we're just going to stick to English here and keep on going. And then because we do have a few people watching in the English channel as well. So it's very oily and it has a great mouthfeel. Yes, I still have that. Really, really nice. So any other tasting notes out there from anyone else that wants to mention this? This is the whiskey that you can spend a little bit of time with and just discover more and more things. This was one of the best-selling whiskeys at the whiskey fair in Schwetzingen, the last one I had it with. So brown sugar, no edges, exactly. Wonderfully created here. Thank you very much, Hader. Delicate sugar, hazelnut, a hint of cacao, herbs, a Kentucky chew. Yes. Very, very much so. That is very, very tasty. Now, this is going to be the second best whiskey of the evening. Why do I say that? Because the best whiskey of the evening is going to be next. So, originally, we had 3 whiskeys here from Wilderness Trail. They were these 3. Actually, 1 year ago with Haley, I did a live stream. We have the wheated bourbon, we have the high rye bourbon, and we have the rye whiskey. So now on top of that, there are store picks in the United States of America. And those store picks can be very, very special. And so they get a nice little label on the side that says family reserve because you're part of the family. And you can actually see how old they are. In this case, this was going to be, wait a second, let me get the next one. So I invite you to pick out the 50% bourbon. If you're looking at your stickers here, it's going to be 17E19 minus 5, 50%. And this is 4 years, 9 months. The barrel was a number 4 char, and the rickhouse was actually BE1741. When I was there, they're actually, for the next 5 years, they're actually building 3 rickhouses a year. One is just finished, one is being built, and the other one, they're actually laying the foundation so they can start building. So they're always in that process. They need a 5-year period to actually go up to capacity that they have enough warehouses at the moment. And the yeast strain is their FP1. That's their standard. So now what I would like to do, you see €7 is what it would cost for a dram at the whiskey fair. So feel free to visit me this weekend in Greiz in Vogtland if you're there at the whiskey fair, or if the week after that in Hamburg at Just Whiskey. I'll also be there with these bottles and with the opportunity to bring something home if you'd like. So now this I opened up at the whiskey fair in Schwetzingen, the Whiskey Spring, just a few weeks ago, and I tried it and I was like, oh, salted caramel. I really, 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 really enjoyed this. And I invite you to, it's so much sweeter. Now, this is a problem with a single barrel. When they're gone, they're gone. Yeah, so this is a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous product. Now, when I first originally received this bottling, it was like 50%. Why? Come on, it should be cask strength. 50%? Come on, it's barrel proof. So we're looking at €79 for this bottle here. And then I realized why they sent that. They sent it because it's a beautiful, beautiful bottling. This is so good, in my opinion, that I actually have set aside a few bottles for myself. Hey, Phoenix, hello from Dolmedad, New Zerfina. I have no idea where that is. Here, my friend Royalux says here for his number 6-year-old, this is corn syrup, a hint of mint, nutmeg, cinnamon bubble gum, and a hint of cloves, very round and easy drinking. That was his whiskey, his birthday whiskey here. Very, very good. So, yeah, this has an excellent, excellent color as well. It's all, of course, virgin oak, 4 years, and this was, as I said, 8 months. If I can remember, 9 months, and the flavor profile is outstanding. So the butterscotch, yes, the butterscotch bottle, the salted caramel butter, exactly. This one was divine. Look at that. Haha, who knows here? So they're all single barrels. Yes, we bought over the entire bottle of each. Very, very good. So now, thank you, Nathan, for mentioning that as well. Now, this 50%. So we have here at the bottle, this is bottle number 20 of 223. So we were very, very fortunate to receive these family reserves. This is not something that my business partners over here in UK received. Nathan, for example, from Nanten. This was something that we in Germany somehow were privileged enough to get. And all of these other single barrels are just fantastic, fantastic things. So it's just an idea of the outturn here. Yes. Now, I would like you, those of us that have the samples at home, the 50% high rye bourbon, to also write down what you have here on a tasting note. So now bourbons are sometimes similar. This was a whiskey that I thoroughly enjoyed. My 750 milliliter bottle is already half empty. Ooh. Butterscotch, fudge, pretty much nails it for the nose on this one. Thank you very much. So if you'd be so kind, I would invite you to taste along and to think about ranking these according to where they are. Now, this bottle has had a few weeks to open up, so that was my original first impression of this whiskey, that butterscotch, that salted caramel. Cheers. It is really amazing how different and yet how similar these two are. The 6-year-old has such a complexity, such a depth. And this has that brown sugar, that little bit of butterscotch and caramel moment going on here. I like a lot. Thank you. Cheers to you as well. So, now I'm really interested in your opinion. So, hey, Hater just says here, just delicious. I could imagine the Scotch Whiskey Society just writing down, just delicious. That's a tasting note that I totally agree with. Fudged with candied peanuts. Ooh. See, I don't get peanuts very often in my whiskeys, and so that's something I cannot 100% reflect on. But hey, if you have peanuts, you have peanuts, and that's fine. I have a lot often a hazelnut, a pecan, a walnut. I've had a lot of peanuts in my life, a lot of peanut butter in my life, probably more than most Germans can ever say. But it's not something that I often get there. I've had salted peanuts, boiled peanuts, raw peanut, all types of peanuts. I'm not sure if I get the peanut or not. Excellent. So, I talked about the grains from the farms. I talked about their own yeast that they have here. I did not talk about that. They have a specialized process they use, which is called Infusion. Infusion. So it's called let me go back here. It's called the infusion mashing process. Now, one of the things that you learn when you look and you consult other distilleries are what they're doing wrong. And I've been at a few distilleries and I've helped at a couple of distilleries in Germany actually distill things. And one of the things that is very, very interesting, and I find absolutely still up until this day, totally, I'm not going to say totally, a slight mystery is the mashing process. Yeah. So single malt, Scotch, 100% barley, no problem. Boom, you knew the temperature, you put it in there, you threw the 3 washes. The 4th wash you begin as the first one, and you have all those sugars you take out there. That process of gelatization and that process of breaking down the starches into smaller, shorter chains of so that the yeast can eat it. I almost get the concept. But with mash bills as complex as bourbons, where you have corn, which is totally different, which has wheat, which has a totally different point, and barley, which is much, much lower, it's very, very important to know what you're doing. And many of the distilleries out there just boil it. 220 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius, and they make some mistakes. And Wilderness Trail has found out about those mistakes, and they've actually set points, temperature points, just like you have with yeast. You don't want it over a certain degree, 35 degrees Celsius, so that it doesn't die off. You can actually do a lot of harm if you overcook or overheat your grains as well. And so they're doing a lot of good things there. All right, very, very good. So let's go to what we have for tasting notes here. Christoph says, apples to apples, age and ABV. Do you really taste that much difference in straight bourbon? Oh, yes. Just as I said. I never find peanut in my whiskey either. Phoenix says, those sugar-coated peanuts. Wow, great. Klaus writes down, no sweet bubblegum after that fudge. This cookie dough, yes, very, very much so. And it goes on and on and on. There's a tiny little bit of a sour note in here. Okay, we'll talk about the difference between sour mash and sweet mash because they use the sweet mash process. We have white chocolate in the finish here. So, okay, Christopher finds here peanut skins in the Freud. Good. Salted caramel with pieces of chocolate, nutmeg, brown sugar, creamy. Very, very good. And hi to you as well. So, an excellent single cask that I just love. So, they go into the barrel proof. So, one thing that's very, very common for craft distillers, even though Wilderness Trail is one of the 12 largest distilleries for whiskey in the United States, which is amazing. So they're at almost, they surpassed they surpassed Wild Turkey, for example. Yeah, so Wilderness Trail is bigger than Wild Turkey, just to give some dimensions. Wow. Not all of it they fill up themselves. A lot of it is contract distilling, about half now. And so half of it they're doing for others, half of it they're doing for themselves. So I would totally, with a cracker afterwards, there's a lot of marzipan. Yummy, yummy. And Sheffin says there's a spiciness in the aftertaste. Very, very good. All in all, hearing you all, another delicious one, it seems. I'm salivating. Salivating. Yeah, very, very good. So those are my 2 favorite, actually. So we're working maybe our way down. Maybe that's not the best way of doing, but I'm working on the ABV going up and the rye towards the end. It's always the question of where do you put the rye, because the rye seems to linger longer on the palate than a bourbon does. So now, if I can invite you to go to the next bottle, that is going to be our 56.52%. And that's going to be our barrel number 17E0910. So we're moving up in the ABV. We're now going to our 56. Now, I remember the first time I opened this up, the 56% hit me a little bit in the face. All right, so this is actually a neck pour. My samples I had to give away. I forgot to send something to someone, and another person never received their samples, even though they went out. So I was down 2 sets, and so I'll open up new bottles that I need anyways for the whiskey fairs. So this is going to be the neck pour. Now they go into the barrel. Barrel entry proof is 110 proof, so 55%. So this actually has gone up in ABV over the 4 years and 8 months. So this is an independent stave company barrel that they used here. So this one was, let me see if I remember what the SC means here. No, it's ISC. I can't read. This is also International Stave Company on there. So they're using a lot of international stave companies. Do the first 4 have the same mash bill? Yes. It all says here on the side. So the old traditional mash bill of corn, rye, and malted barley, everything there, and it's put into the barrel at 110%. And this bourbon was created to highlight the robust flavors only found in whiskeys straight from the barrel, nothing added, nothing taken away. Non-chilled filtered, natural color, and absolutely at cask strength. So very, very, very nice thing. Yes, they are bigger in the production capacity than Wild Turkey. Amazing, isn't it? Just to show the size of this. And they've done that in the last 8, 9 years. They've grown so much. It's unbelievable. All right, very, very good. So let's move over now, as I said, to our 56.52. So you on your label have 56.5. Now, on the nose from the neck pour, I must admit that this really actually also I like. Now, at the Whiskey Fair, I picked up the bottles on a Tuesday, loaded them on Thursday, and was at the Whiskey Fair on a Friday, and I opened the bottles there. I did not try them beforehand. I just arrived from the United States back, and there wasn't enough time to do this or that. Everything was just getting things set up so I could go to the Whiskey Fair. And I opened actually the next one, the 57%. And towards the very, very end of the Whiskey Fair, there's this one guy who said, open that. It's like, oh man, it's the last day and everything else is open. That only one bottle isn't open. Could you please? All right, good, no problem. Open up. I'll buy the bottle. I was like, okay, it was worth opening it. Yes, it was. He said he really, really liked this. So I've subbed to their newsletter and browsed on the website while listening. It seems huge indeed. It doesn't really, that website doesn't really do it justice, in my opinion. So maybe Wild Turkey is easily available in Europe because they're owned by Campari. Yes, and while they've been here for decades. Don't forget, we're dealing with a distillery that started actually 9 years ago. Their 8-year-old whiskey just came out, and they originally only had a pot still, and then they moved to a small column still. They moved to the larger column still now, so they can run on both of the column stills. And that is where we have the magic. That is where we have capacity. So their oldest stock they have ever had was an 8-year-old whiskey. The oldest stock that ever made it to Europe is a 6-year-old whiskey. Most of the single barrels are the 4-year-old, 4 to 5-year-old, and that's their flavor profile. They're going to keep that flavor profile, and there's going to be a flavor profile by the 6 to 8. So between the 4 to 6, people love that, and other people like the more oaky, spicy moment from the 6 to 8. And they'll have both flavor profiles of those 3 different brands here. No problem. Okay. So now we have the name here, the 17E0810. The nose is the bread dough. We have the mint, we have herbs, and a little auto repair shop. Duke, you used to be a car mechanic, so you know how it smells. That's a funky note that I usually don't get. But I do get the bread dough, I do get the mint, I do get the herbs. I'm just going to invite you to drink along with me. Feel free, because we have 3 identical mash bills and single barrels to compare to each other. They're all, one is 4 and 10 months, the other 2 are 4 and 9 months. So they're very, very, very similar. And the question is, which one should I buy? I'm going to say the 50%. Maybe someone else is going to say this one. Maybe someone's going to say the next one. We can vote at the end and you can see which one you like. Cheers. Exhibition Whiskey says lecker. Lecker in Germany is yummy. Delicious. That is good. That is really good as well. So it's got more sweetness as well. So we have here our butterscotch, our salted caramel, and we have here our brown sugar. Very, very nice. I do like. Now, I'm not going to put any water in any of these today. I don't think they actually need it. This is just something that is really, really nice. So all the single barrels here of the high rye bourbon are 79 euros. Different shops have different things. And if you can't find it in a shop, just contact me once again at whiskyjason@gmail.com and we'll make something here work and something happen. So I can send them out or I can give you a recommendation to a shop that has them. But as I mentioned, we are right at the beginning of the rollout of these bottles, and it's in the middle of the summer vacation time. So we have here a little bit of orange zest, says Haida, or Haida. Cheers. Has more of that sweetness. Has more of that. If I had a sweet tooth day, and there are days that I have a sweet tooth, that might actually be my favorite. But today I'm still going towards 1 and 2. And number 3 is very, very nice. Something I look forward to examining and exploring more in the future. All right, good. So the orange zest I like. So barrel entry proof I talked about as well. Now they have this big campus out there in Danville, Kentucky. So if you're we flew into Tennessee, other people fly into Cincinnati, other people in the States somehow make it to Louisville. Didn't seem to be the biggest airport in the country, but that's okay. And you have to drive about 90 minutes almost to get to Danville. It's a little bit in the rural area of Kentucky, not really close by to anything. So we have here the brown sugar, the orange peel, nice and strong. Much bigger rye character with this one, more herbs, sourdough, and orange zest. Very good. More wood in this one. A little more challenging, Klaus says. Very, very nice. And a little bit more alcohol. So what I have not talked about yet is the sour mash process versus sweet mash. So many, many, many bourbons will just say, especially supermarket bourbons, Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey Sour Mash. Now, Dr. Crow, way back when, about 200 years ago now, he actually discovered, he was a scientist, he was actually someone who knew what he was doing, that a lot of the problems with creating beer / what you make beer, you distill a beer and you make it into whiskey, is that the pH level was not right. And so in order to actually help the different farmers back then, we didn't have big distillers like we do today with Wilderness Trail, with our knowledge, with our equipment to actually test and monitor the pH levels and everything else, that they would actually have problems with a lot of contamination, a lot of variation. So he gave the recommendation to him and his own distillery, as well as other distilleries and farmers, to actually take a little bit of setback. Setback is when we take a certain part, let's say 10% of our mash beforehand, those spent grains. You mash something, you distill something, and then from that little bit of those back set, you actually take that and put it back into the new mash that's being fermented. So, and that allows that the yeast has a certain amount of it's continuous, as well as a certain sourness for the pH. And this was a very important process to ensure quality control back then. Today, and this is something very, very interesting by Wilderness Trail, is they are a chemical-free distillery. So what happens is in your boiler, you usually use some type of chemicals, caustic solution, to actually remove all that badness that's in there. And a few traces of that might make their way up into the mash. So you have to cleanse your still, you have to cleanse your boiler and so on, and that is often done using chemicals. I remember going to one distillery in Germany, and there were like 3 big tanks, and I was like, "Oh, what's that?" He said, "Chemicals, for cleaning chemicals." I was like, "Okay, good, yeah, no problem." But that's something that they do not use at Wilderness Trail because they're so clean in all what they do. They have a sweet mash, and the sweet mash process allows them to actually create a different flavor profile. And this flavor profile is a little bit sweeter and has a little bit of a different characteristic. Now, there are certain reasons to use the sour mash, and there's a lot of reasons to use the sweet mash. So, Peerless, Caleb learned a lot from what was going on here at Wilderness Trail, and they pioneered this and they've used this a lot, that sweet mash method. So, Matthias says hi. Robin says, good evening. The 6th year is more complex. The 50% is just great. Butterscotch with a lot of brown sugar. What do I buy? A very, very difficult question. So sorry if I missed this, but if Wilderness, all right, so WT, Wilderness Trail, or Wild Turkey, sorry, the Wilderness Trail are using sweet mashes. Do they experiment with the yeast strain, or are they using the same one or something special? They do have different yeasts. Here you can always see what yeast is being used. For example, here in our 56%, we are actually using our S21. So 921, I can't read. The 921 yeast strain. Now, everything else so far has been the yeast strain here. Whoops, can't read that one, but I can read this one. This has the firm solution FP1, and this has a different yeast strain, and that gives a different flavor profile as well. So they do experiment. For most of the stuff, they just use your standard FP1, but here they actually have experimented. So very, very good. For all those that came a little bit later, Haley had a problem, and she's not going to come today. So that's life as it is. All right. I'm going to invite you to move up to the, whoops, my bottles have been switched around. The big boy of the evening. We have 57.03. This is also with the yeast 921. So the 3rd and the 4th today are very, very similar. This is 4 years and 10 months. And this is also an International Stave Company number 4 char. So very, very cool. I keep coming back to the 6-year-old tonight. I think it's great. I totally agree with you here as well, Dirk. That is great. So all of these single barrels, 79 euros. The 6-year-old, unfortunately, is more expensive, limited quantities, not that much out there, 93 euros. So very cool. Thanks for the information. Great that they put it on the label. Only on the single barrels do they put it here on the label. All right, so what they do put on the label, and one of the things that Wilderness Trail tries to do is as much transparency as absolutely possible. All right, so they're not hiding anything. They tell you the yeast. I'm sure they would tell you the grains, where they come from, the farms. I heard the names of the farmers today, where they got them from. It's all within a radius about 50 miles of where from the distillery, the farm. And that was also something that I thought was very, very interesting. They talked a little bit here about the problem with sourcing the grain. Now, sourcing the grain, I can get rid of these, is not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is getting rid of the spent grain. So you mash it, you distill it, and what's left have to get rid of it. And you need to have farmers to do that. Now you can put in biogas system and you can use it and get that still someplace else. But the best thing they're doing at the moment is they're giving the cattle. And so you need a certain amount of farmers to actually take that. So they're producing something like, I think 200,000 gallons of spent grains a week. Yeah, I think that's like 8 tractor trailers. That could be even more. Don't quote me on the numbers. I'm sorry. It's an unbelievable amount of stuff they have to get rid of. Now, I do know some distilleries, Reservoir Distillery, that I'm doing a stream with next week. They actually just flush it down the canalization, and that high protein biomass is actually something the city of Richmond likes. Now, that's way too much that they're doing at Wilderness Trail to do that. And so they have to get rid of that with the farmers. And one of the aspects that I found that was very, very interesting, he talked about there are certain regions, let's take Bardstown, for example, where there's a lot of distilleries. Now, within a 1 hour driving distance of Bardstown, there might not be enough farmers to supply enough grain for all those distilleries. And don't forget, there's a lot of fuel plants out there as well that need a lot more of the grains than the bourbon that we drink need. Remember, in your gasoline, there's E5 and E10, 10% fuel-based ethanol. That's based on corn. And those fuel plants actually are just super efficient manufacturers, not of taste, which we want, but of ethanol, pure ethanol. And they use exactly the same ingredients. Well, maybe not the malt and barley, maybe not the wheat, but definitely the corn. Okay, very, very good. So very few distilleries disclose the yeast that they use, probably in Scotland at least, except some craft, because it's all the same. Yes, America loves their yeast. Great Britain, Scotland just use for efficiency, for yield, and not for taste. So it was very clear that the bottle I liked is the most expensive one. All right, and the 57 has a nice barrel char. All right, let's try the 57%. I like that we do 2 digits here, 57.3%. This has a char 4, just like the other ones did as well. There's nothing special here about this. Oh, okay. I think I named this brown sugar the first time I tried it. So, does this have some perfume? While other distilleries, more in continental Europe and new craft distilleries, it seems, use rather brewery yeast, said to have less yield, but more flavorsome, it is said too. All right, so was it Glen Scotia? No, Loch Lomond. It was Loch Lomond. Same company group, Loch Lomond. Actually, and Roy from Aquavita loves it. Had a champagne yeast they used, and he just loves that. Don't forget, where do we create alcohol? We do not create alcohol in the still. The still separates the alcohol from the rest of the liquid. So the alcohol is produced by the yeast in the fermentation tanks. And so those yeast organisms are the things that actually create the flavor that we like. Now, Dr. Pat was asked in one of his many podcasts he's done, what percentage of the flavor comes from the yeast and what percentage comes from the barrel. It's like, oh, that's a difficult one. Depends on the yeast, depends on this, depends on that, and so on. But he said 15 to 20%. I'll go with that number. I like that. Oh, I still like the number. I still like the 50%. Oh, the 6-year-old's got so much more complexity. So, yes, Belgium Isle is a very great place. They are also a brewery. They're doing good stuff. They have the pot stills of the Caledonia distillery in them, don't they? And that was also the place that had the highest ABV of a whiskey so far, 74%, I think. Way over the 70%. And also Westland. Just so you know how the bottle looks like it. Also uses some interesting yeast there. Thank you very much, Greg. Time for a yeast revolution in Scotland. Hey there, it's not about the yeast. It's about the entire yield system. I'm going to say this once and I'm going to move on. Almost all the distilleries, noticed I quantified it, almost all distilleries in Scotland are not interested in flavor. They are interested in yield. And they use the barley varietal, and they use the yeast varietal that brings the most yield. Not the flavor, the yield. Sorry to say that. Cappadoniac. Very, very good. So this 73%, 73. All right. And this 57.03 is very strong, but much oilier. Ah, it was 77. I haven't had the 77, I think. Oh, this one bites. Yeah, I said this is alcohol. Okay, a little bit of perfume is what they also have here. And Greg disagrees with me. Too bad. All right, cheers. I'm missing a little bit of the sweetness. It has a little bit of brown sugar towards the end, but it has a lot more of an alcohol bite. I have the feeling. Now, scientifically, that's one of the things. Oh, I can take a look here. We have 212 bottles. And here we had 206 bottles. Just threw off my whole system. The question was, how much alcohol dissipated from the cask and how much water dissipated from the cask? So the 56% had more total volume lost, angel share, than this. There were more bottles here, 6. But I have the feeling as if there was more, less interaction here, less of a smoothing out of the edges. So, yeah, Caledonia was just the name of Scotland as well. So this is somewhere between number 2 and number 3, butterscotch and fudge, but also has a little bit of an herbal note. I agree, more alcohol bite, but he prefers number 3, Hater. Very, very good. So number 4 is not going to be my favorite. So if I had to rank these according to what I want, in a moment you can rank as well, I would go 2, 1, 3, 4. Maybe you can write down here what your ranking is at this moment. All right. Good. But still, for me, not the best. The 57. The 56, much better. The 50, much better. The 6-year-old, almost as good, different, but I like the 50% one. Okay, yes. The 6-year-old bottled and bond 50% seems to be more popular than the 57 single barrel here in Southern California. Interesting. I did not know that. Here, I prefer number 3, Alex says at the moment. Okay, I'm a number 2, but number 2 and number 3, looky here. 3, 2, 1, 4. Hater, you put my 6-year-old on number 3. Interesting. So, this one's very oaky to me as well. All right, very, very good. So what we're going to do is we're going to move now. For those of you that have the bottles, there's a little thing underlined called rye. Other things were high rye bourbon. We have so much information I put on the label. I'm sorry. So we have 2 rye whiskeys, and we're going to start off with the 51%, and then we're going to move up to the 52.55%. So the 51% has this nice little label here. It says it's a family reserve, which means it's been extra selected for the single cask program. This is not for the single cask program. It's missing the label here, but it is a single barrel, and it is a Settlers Select with 52.55%. So confusing sometimes. All right. Now, what Wilderness Trail also did, I can mention that in this moment, is they've gone away from the single barrels. Single barrels cost more time and effort to make, and they moved to small batches. Now, they still do a single barrel program for store picks and so on, but the general whiskeys, so we're talking now about the wheated, the bourbon was always a small batch, as well as in the future the ryes. They're all going to be small batches and no longer single barrels. So we have here 3, 2, 1, 4. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 3, 1, 2, 4. We have 1, 4, 3, 2. Oh, Marcel likes the 4. And Greg loves rye. I do too. I do too. All right, so now we're moving into the world of rye. I'm going to do a tiny little bit of a palate cleanse. And then we'll try these two. You can vote, and then we can see what's going on here. So I think this is a artificial cork, which I like. I like the Wilderness Trail here. I was going to ask Haley, which she's not here, unfortunately, today. We'll have to redo this stream or invite her to a different part where we actually do something together there. Why the name Wilderness Trail, and why the tree with that logo on there. So sorry. All right, Lawrence goes for another vote for rye. So I don't get it. Why then the blended one is more expensive than a single barrel with higher ABV? It's older. It's very, very, very rare. So there's not much 6-year-old out there. There's much more of the 4 and a 5-year-old, but not much 6. That's the reason why it's more expensive. There was only a few barrels left in the warehouse, or the first warehouse I built. It was also very interesting, the sizes of the warehouse. They have I think it's 11 or 15 different 20,000 barrel warehouses they're in the process of building over the next 4 to 5 years. And before that, they had a 10,000 barrel warehouse, and before that they had a 1,000, just to see the dimensions of, okay, they started off, we have a distillery, we have a 1,000 barrel warehouse, yay. Oh, we need a column still, then we'll build a 10,000 barrel warehouse. Oh, we have another we have another column still, we need real warehouses. Okay, 10 15 times 20,000. Okay, that should be enough. Boom, 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 boom. And you just don't need the farmers that produce and deliver to you this corn. You also need the cooperages giving you the barrels in this time of a barrel shortage in America. And you also need a place to store those barrels. And don't forget, half of what they're producing is their own stock, half of what they're producing is contract distilling, which means they have been able to finance. The board of directors is Shane and Pat. That's the two of them. I knew they were. We were talking with someone at the distillery. He said sometimes there's a board meeting actually out in a cornfield. They just two go walk and it's official. Then they type up the minutes of the meeting, and that was a meeting of the board of the distillery. The two of the guys are great. So we'll only listen, as I still have to fold some laundry before going on holiday tomorrow. All right, very, very good. So 3, 1, 2, 4. What was the question, Greg, here? I don't get it. Okay, that's very, very, or did I miss on the different expressions? Yes. So you can see that the gray label costs more. All the other single bottle expressions are 79 euros. All right. So which rye do we taste first? Yes, the 51%. We're always trying to move up in ABV. Start at the lower, move up. Rye in the end instead of at the beginning. So now I have here the rye. The rye has a different mash bill. It says here that we have a mash bill of 12% malted barley, 38% corn, and we have, if I could just read, 56% rye. Let me make sure I get this right. Yep. So 50%, 56% rye. I'm getting old, and I should be wearing glasses sometimes. And so I took a little trick here from Ralphie, and I can actually zoom in very, very nicely, and we have 56% rye. Sometimes it's good to just have a magnifying glass. So the question is, does it mean this increase in production, move to major small batches instead of single barrels, more to export and selfishly some for France? Can you ask here? Yes. Now, the problem with the France is N10 Bourbons has the rights for the European Union and for the UK, if I understand correctly. And so we start off with UK usually. Then we move to Germany. As soon as we have the German market set up, then we'll actually expand to other countries of Europe. Sorry, that's the way it's working at the moment. Some of the brands from N10, for example, say, hey, we're not going to expand the next 2 years. We're going to solidify our markets. Wilderness Trail, as well as many other brands that we represent, are fairly young. founded in the last 10 years. They're still ramping up production. They have the capacity to make a lot of barrels. They have a lot of barrels in warehouses. They don't yet have enough aged stock to actually supply the entire demand. And that's why one of the reasons they went from the single barrel to small batch is to actually be able to supply the demand domestically in the US of A. And then when that market is more or less satisfied, then we start talking about other markets as well. At the moment, I have the feeling, this is my personal feeling, we beg for new pallets sometimes to come to Europe. And at the beginning, we're just setting up brand awareness. We're building this brand here. We're building distribution. And we're learning from some of the mistakes we've made here in Germany. And hopefully, we'll be able to roll out to other countries in Europe better. So, Nathan, if you want to add on something there, please write in the chat. And yep, the USA is a very, very huge country. Christian says, maybe a dumb question, but what's the difference between rye and high rye? So rye means it's a minimum of 50% rye, 51% rye. That is a rye whiskey. Just like a bourbon has to be at least 51% corn, just like a wheated whiskey has to be 51% wheat, and just like a malted whiskey has to be at least 51% malt. So there's the 4 categories of whiskey. If you take a look at Woodford Reserve, they have all 4. They have a rye, they have a bourbon, they have a wheat, and they have a malt. Now, not many people produce a wheat 51%. We talk about a wheater, which is bourbon with wheat in it, but not 51%. And so in this case, this whiskey here has less than 51%. So it's a high rye bourbon. Now, the question that you can ask me, it's not legally defined. Where does a low rye and where does a high rye bourbon start? So is it above 10%? Is it above 15%? Is it even above 20%? Where is the high rye? And so if you take a look at this bottle again, you will see that it actually has the wrong bottle. Can't read. It's not on there. I take a look at this. We actually have here our 24% rye. So I'm going to go anything between 15 and 20% is going to be high rye, is my personal expression here. I like the rye better than the bourbon. Very, very good, Stefan. Surprisingly delicious. This confuses my order. Yay. And we are switching over to 700 milliliter bottles as well, which is very, very good. And that's important. Yes. Okay, good. So, and we are awaiting the labels. I saw the proofs last week. They have gone to the printers and I have requested 400 cases. Wow, that's 2,400 bottles. Some for Germany and some for other EU states. Looky there. We're going to work on distribution in Europe already. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. So, sorry, but I have to ask in German. When Wilderness Trail so big is, will it someday actually be in supermarkets or will it stay in the retail whiskey shops? Now, I'm going to ask the other question, Dirk. Can you tell me a brand in Islay whiskeys that is not in the supermarket? So, why or what special reason will there be for for bourbons in Germany only be in specialized retail stores? I think we're going to have some bottlings, store picks, family reserves, special bottling, the 6, the 8, and so on, that will only be available due to the price point in the retail specialized shops. But isn't the goal of most brands to actually be available to a wide consumer base, which means basically in Europe available in supermarkets? So, all right. Thank you. All right. Very, very, very good. So, yes, 24% rye. You remember better than I do, Greg. Thank you very much. All right. So, those of you who have tried, please try again and write down your comments here. So far, surprisingly good. Hey, Thomas. Good to see you. Cheers. Mmm. Mmm. Wow. That also confuses my order. So, I do like a good rye. Now, N10 Bourbons has a lot of different brands. And I will be at a whiskey fair and I have all those brands up in the front of me and I'll be presenting them. And we had a problem up until the last whiskey fair that Wilderness Trail didn't have very much products left in Germany. It sold out fairly quickly. And for many, many people in the UK and for America, Wilderness Trail is the whiskey with the most finesse. It's got a great finish. Due to all of that yeast and all of that whiskey making knowledge and all those tiny little adjustments of the sweet mash, I'm going to have a hypothesis here. Sweet mash and rye are fabulous. All right. We have with Peerless the sweet mash and the rye, fabulous. We have here the sweet mash and the rye, fabulous. I think something special happens with sweet mash and rye. That is very, very special. I might put that in the top of the pack of all of these. That is very, very, very nice. So yes, and okay, N10 bourbons. Yeah, in English. In German, insane bourbon, and the insane, it almost sounds like insane with someone here. All right. It is true that some brand reps stated the brand X or Y don't want to be in supermarkets. Imagine why, image-wise. But many moved finally to supermarkets when more consumers than retailers showed up. Exactly. Oh, this sounds more and more interesting. It is a fabulous, fabulous brand. I spent almost the entire day today while doing other things, listening to Pat and Shane on different podcasts, on different online interviews and so on. And it is, wow. This one may beat the bourbons for me. Exactly. Very, very good. The nose was a bit shy, tiny bit, but the palate is better. Herbal, zesty. I have to admit, I prefer the high rye bourbons. Yeah, yeah. Very, 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 very good. Yeah, this was good. Depends on the mood. Mm-hmm. That is a good bottle. 79 euros as well. Very, very, very nice. Excellent. All right. So the last but not least, we're going to go to the number 6, and then you get to vote, and then we get to see which of these you actually like the best. So Greg says, "Oh no, I want these two now." So I would actually have the 6-year-old. I would actually have a single barrel high rye bourbon, and then I'd have a rye whiskey as well. And don't forget, there's just a very few bottles still left of the single barrel here of the wheated. The new batch will be the new pallets that are coming over here are small batch. So very, very good. Very good. That was the 51%. Yes. So 1 and then 5. Yes, interesting. The 6-year-old, and then the rye, then 2, 3, 4. Thank you very much, dear. All right, last but not least, we have here something that was not picked as a single barrel, but it was sent with us. And this is the 52.5%. I have bottle number 4 of 245, and we have 52.55%. It's very interesting that Wilderness Trail puts their rye in at 100 proof and the bourbon at 110. So, which means 50% and 55%. Now, they do vary a little bit, and they've traded those off back and forth. But low barrel proof, why? Because there has been experiments and scientific information that actually proves that alcohol dissolves different components from the oak than water does. And so if you actually put it in a lower proof and you do not add water to it before putting in the bottle, you're going to have a much better, different, sweeter, for me, more caramel experience with your whiskeys than if you had put it in at 62.5%, which is the legal maximum, and then watered it down to 50 some percent. That does two things. gets more of the bitter tannins out of the wood, and also dilutes the product, which you lose a lot of that mouthfeel going on there. Here, I like rye for cocktail, but this is too good and expensive to end up in my old fashioned. All right. Yes, we do need to talk here. So N10 is actually the postal code of the area where this company in the UK was founded. I found that to be very, very simplistic, not very, very creative, but hey, N10 bourbons. So Herr Schmidt, Mr. Schmidt says, hello, we're enjoying our evening. Yes, we are. I've only had the J.P. Wiser's dissertation once, sorry, as a little tiny sample. I can't compare it. I haven't had enough. Here, Stefan says, I saved the best one for the end. Well done. So 52.55%. It's also a little bit shy on the nose, a little bit reserved. There's a tiny little bit more of that rye dough, cookie dough here at the end. So palate cleansing. Mm-hmm. I prefer the 5 to the 6. The finesse of a wilderness trail and the depth of the 6-year-old make it perfect. That's true. The alcohol, the 52.55 versus the 51%, 1.55%. This has a little bit more of a, I'm going to use the word edge here again. I found that the number 5 was a tiny little bit more coherent, is my word here. There's a little bit more of a tannin moment. There's a little bit more of that brown sugar moment going on with number 5. All right, so we can now vote. So those of you that actually have the sets, I invite you now to go to this website. It is in German. And I invite you, whoops, not the right thing to copy and paste. So we can do this. And we can hopefully now be able to, yes, to vote and to put them into your order. This is how my logo looks on my English channel. This is how my logo looks on my German channel. So Klaus says here, okay, 1, 2, 5, 4, 6, 3. And yes, it depends on my mood. Very, 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 very good. So I'm going to put my 6-year-old bourbon in position number 2. My family reserve 50% in number 1. You actually have, instead of the barrel numbers, I actually use my internal naming system, WT for Wilderness Trail. This is the 5th expression that came over. We had 3 different bottlings, A, B, and C. So W25C. So, and then I'm going to put as number 3 my rye. That's interesting. All right, it's a single barrel, 50%, the 6-year-old, and then the rye. So I'm going to put the 56.5 and then the rye again. And the family reserve single barrel, something has to be last with the 57%. All right, so not to say it's bad, but just to say the others are so much better in my opinion. Excuse my arm there in the way. All right, now I can actually see who has voted and what are then the results so far. Good. Ooh. Yeah, we do have here a certain tendency. All right, very, very good. So please write down in the chat what your expressions you like. As I said, for me, the winner is going to be, nope, it's not this one. The number 2 is going to be this one. This is going to be number 5. The winner is going to be my 50%. The second one's going to be the Bourbon. There we go. Put it down here. So the rye. Then we have the 56%. And then we have the 57 at the end, and the 56 in the middle. Good. So at least I know what I'm doing here now. All right, so we have here 5. Very, very interesting. That's for me on the 3rd place. And then the 3. Very, very, very good. Then 1, then 2, then 6, then 4. So I think most people are going to put the number 4 towards the end here. So, oh, I'm wrong. One person put the 4 actually on number 1. So that is actually interesting. So at the minute, wow, very, very, very nice. We actually have a winner for the 6-year-old. That's kind of cool. So let's see if I can see if that's a little bit more easier to read here. So very, very nice. So if there's any questions here, so we have a totally different order here. 1, 5, 2, 3, 6, 4. So that's always the question of what do we want and what do we like. So I think I've really talked about everything that Wilderness Trail here actually has helped me to understand what's going on and how it's going on. I still am absolutely in amazement about all the tiny little adjustments they've made to the process, not because they've learned by doing at their own distillery, but rather because they learned from the other distilleries that they consulted and helped, and on the list of do not do, but instead do this. And they solved the problem with terroir using local grains. They solved the problem with taste with the sour versus the sweet mash. Yeah, they saved the problem with the infusion mashing process of not overcooking the grain and getting it burnt and getting it in a different way that it should not be. They have the yeast problem solved. They are the experts at yeast. They're doing so many things there that are absolutely right. I cannot believe it. Okay, I cannot rule out tomorrow that number 5 will be on top. That's exactly right, CP. All right, so we don't know what's going on. Tomorrow, my order may be different. Same here. All right, so we're going to call it quits in a couple minutes. I hope you have now voted. Best was still number 3 for sure. I used water 361254. All right, very, very, very good. I'm going to upload this one last time. So the loser, we all agree at the moment, is going to be here our basically number 4, the single barrel high rye with 57.03. It's just a little bit sharp. That everything else is basically within one vote of each other, except for one thing. One thing actually most people loved, and that is going to be, the 6-year-old. The 6-year-old with its complexity, with its depth, with its flavor profile is absolutely the winner of the evening. All right, very, very, very nice here. Now, if you go to, for example, Dined Whiskey, and we go to, I'm going to just type in the word wilderness and actually just show here. This is one of my premium partners, Wilderness Trail, over here in Germany for our websites. So come on, there we go. We have the Wilderness Trail here. So this is one place that you can buy it. Oh, you can get a tiny, tiny little bit cheaper with me. Maybe here. So it's now up. Share screen. So other shops are going to have it in the future, but Wilderness Trail is at Dine Whiskey. 94 euros 90. The recommended retail price is 93, but that's the way that is at the moment. And it is a beautiful, beautiful bottle as well as a beautiful product. So they don't have very much of it. They might be able to sell out in the next couple of days. But that's the problem. And we have enough on stock here at the moment. It was a great evening. Thank you very much, Andrea, for watching. Thank you very much for tasting with me. And thank you very much that we could do this despite the fact that it didn't work out with Haley as expected. WhiskyJason here. If you have any last questions, please ask now. We're going to slowly land probably the next 5 minutes here. Thank you, Lawrence. It was a very nice presentation. Bis bald. See you soon. So, and I can really, really recommend personally the 50%, the 6, and the 51% rye. Those are the barrels that are absolutely fabulous. Now, if I were to pick one, probably everyone else likes the 6-year-old. I like the 50-year-old, the 50%, 50, the 50-year-old bourbon. Good. Okay, thank you, Greg. Thank you. Very interesting. Even without your guest, I was prepared, and hopefully I gave you some tasting notes, and this has gotten me even more interested in Wilderness Trail and what they're doing. What a lovely evening. Thank you. Thank you. So, good. If there are no further questions, always the possibility to contact me directly via email here at whiskeyjason@gmail.com. Otherwise, you can find me on a lot of different social media platforms, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter, and so on. You'll find me there. Otherwise, I'm just going to say thank you for all my guests that have been here. Bye, everyone. First of all, I heard B-U-Y, but then I read B-Y-E. Marcos, thank you for being there as well. And thank you, Nathan, for watching and for supporting me in the chat there. See you soon. Whiskey Jason here. All the best, and Wilderness Trail is something to look out for in the future. It is the whiskey with the most finesse at the moment of the different products that I think we have in Germany. Bye-bye.